The Dravos 9 drifted silently on the edge of known space, her hull hidden beneath layers of reflective shadow tech. The void here was absolute. No stars, no beacons, no debris. Just the vast, humming quiet of the Zalthar expanse, where empires seldom ventured and even smugglers feared to tread. Inside the cruiser's command dome, dim blue light glowed against obsidian panels. Varnari officers moved in smooth, synchronized patterns, their insectoid limbs clicking softly against the metal grating. At the center, Commander Riv Talek stood with arms folded behind his back, his crest flared in confident posture. He watched the main display with narrowed eyes as a single anomaly floated in the holosphere. A massive black silhouette that refused to be categorized. No registry. No thermal signature. No propulsion, muttered 9X. The ship's AI, its voice cool. And metallic. But it's there. Stationary. Approximately 5.2 kilometers in length. Surface detail inconclusive. Riv tilted his head, mandibles twitching. A derelict? He asked, more amused than concerned. Unknown, replied 9X. Its outer shell appears to absorb all known frequencies. No rotation, no energy output. Subtech Arel Voss sat at the secondary scan station, her antennae flexing nervously. Her fingers hovered above the sensor controls, but she hesitated. Commander, she said quietly, I have a bad feeling about this object. It's not just hiding. It's single quotes, S. Waiting. Riv scoffed, the sound a dry click. Your intuition is not in our tactical protocols, Subtech. But, sir, it's silent, he interrupted. And anything that's silent wants to be found. Arel's eyes remained fixed on the object. It didn't drift like debris. It held its place like a predator in still water. Her breath caught in her throat. Recommend full spectrum scan, 9X offered, too quickly. I will personally handle the packet integrity. Riv nodded. Do it. Arel flinched. Sir, please. We don't even know what it is. It could be booby-trapped, or it could be a treasure trove of tech left behind by a fallen empire, Riv snapped. That thing out there? It's data, and we're here to collect it. Scan. The hum began low and cold. From the underbelly of Dravos 9, a pulse of energy spread outward in concentric rings, gamma, ultraviolet, neutrino, gravitic, temporal. It stretched across space and struck the object like a whisper against obsidian. For exactly 7.4 seconds, nothing happened. Then everything broke. The command dome dimmed. Lights flickered. Warning sirens stuttered into confused silence. One of the internal monitors exploded in a rain of sparks. On screen, the anomaly pulsed only once, but the visual systems registered it as a direct intrusion. 9X? Riv barked. The AI's voice stammered, then garbled. Error. Code overlay detected. Core loop breached. Threat priority. The main sensor console burst into flames. Arel screamed, falling. Back as arcs of electric fire crawled up her station like claws. Riv staggered as gravity momentarily destabilized. The hull beneath them sang a deep, gut-sickening vibration that echoed in their bones more than their ears. A chemical alarm flared. Bioskin along the inner walls began to blister and peel like rotten flesh. The ship's environmental shields flickered, momentarily failing. The data they received. It was corrupt, not in error, but in design. It wasn't information. It was a weapon. What did we just scan? Riv shouted, but no one answered. Most of the bridge crew were writhing, clawing at their neural interfaces. Arel lay crumpled at her station, blood trickling from her nose, whispering the same two words over and over again. It's watching. It's watching. It's watching. Above them, on the cracked holosphere, the black silhouette now bore A single marking where before there had been none. A skull. White. Pierced by a lightning bolt dot, and beneath it, in jagged Terran script barely translated, mess with the best. Die like the rest. The silence was gone. Now there was only fear. Asterisk, the ship drifted in darkness. But Travas 9 was no longer whole. Emergency bulkheads had sealed off 3 decks. The medical bay was overflowing, its autosurgeons overwhelmed with neural feedback injuries. Something in the scan data had reached through the interface, rupturing minds as easily as code. The corridors reeked of burned insulation, acidized bioskin, and Panic Dot Commander Riv Talik limped into the auxiliary bridge, one of his lower limbs dragging from the explosion that tore through the command dome. His crest was singed, his uniform scorched, but his pride that remained intact, if cracked. Arel Voss sat slumped against the far wall, her eyes unfocused, lips whispering nonsense. Her fingers twitched in patterns no one recognized. 2 medtechs surrounded her, one checking her pulse, the other muttering about cranial stress spikes. What's her status? Riv demanded. Alive, but something still in her neural mesh, one of the medtechs said, not looking up. Whatever we scanned, it didn't just damage equipment, it entered her. Riv clenched his mandibles. 9X? Offline. Permanently, said the officer at the console. The AI core melted from the inside. The central archive went recursive. It tried to decode the data and fold it into itself. I've never seen anything like it. The code. It broke the architecture of logic itself. Riv growled low in his throat. Reboot auxiliary systems. Triage what we can. We need to send a report to High Command. The officer hesitated. Well? Riv barked. Sir, comma rays are down. Not damage scrambled. Frequencies are gone. The ship's memory lattice was infected during the scan. We don't have coordinates. We don't even have time markers. Riv turned slowly toward the viewing port. And there it was. The ship. Their dots still watching, not moving, not changing. Just there. He felt it not a presence in space, but something deeper, like a weight pressing down on his instincts. This was no derelict, no relic, no prototype dot, it was aware. The shape had not changed, but now the hull shimmered faintly with ghosted light, like starlight rippling on black water. And in that shimmer, fleeting and spectral, Riv saw what looked like faces, Varnari, faces, twisted, screaming, reflected in the hull like a memory the ship refused to forget. He stepped back, behind. Him, Arel stirred. Her voice came sharp and sudden. It wasn't waiting for us. Riv turned. What? It wasn't dormant. It let us see it. It wanted to be scanned. Riv's voice dropped to a whisper. Why? Arel's eyes fixed on his. For the first time, she looked fully aware. So it could scan us back. A cold tremor passed through Reeves' carapace. He turned to the viewport again, and at that exact moment, the black ship shifted. No propulsion signature. No acceleration. Just a gentle, deliberate rotation. It turned, ever so slightly, until its skull insignia was pointed directly at them like a gun slowly finding its target. Riv stumbled backward. Get us out of here. Engage stealth drive. All of it? Now. Engines won't respond, shouted an engineer. They're functional, but there's no system handshake. The core keeps rejecting our commands. Why? I think. The engineer hesitated. I think the ship ... doesn't want us to leave. A silence fell over the auxiliary bridge. One that felt less like stillness and more like being watched by something patient. An armed dot on the view screen, a second symbol began to emerge beneath the skull only for a fraction of a second. It glitched and vanished, but Riv saw it. So did. Arel. Coordinates. Galactic coordinates. as if the ship was inviting them to follow. Or warning them where not to go. No one spoke, because deep down, every creature in that room, organic and synthetic alike, understood the truth. They hadn't discovered the vessel. It had found them, and it had only just begun. The blackout report spread across the command deck of Dravos 9 like blood and water. No engines, no comms, no power surge. Just paralysis. The ship still floated, but not by its own will. Commander Riv Talek stood frozen in front of the forward viewport, the matte black vessel looming in the distance like a wound in reality. Every instinct in his war-hardened mind told him to retreat, to run. But the engines were unresponsive, and the ship had not moved since it turned its gaze toward them. It was not drifting anymore. It was watching. Arel Voss clutched her head, sweat glistening across her brow. Her voice, though weak, was steady. Now, it left a message, embedded in the data stream. Riv snapped around. Message? What message? Not words. Not in any language, Arel said, slowly pushing herself to her feet. It was an emotion. A thought, maybe. A concept. It wanted us to know what it is without speaking. And what is it? Riv growled. Her voice dropped. A boundary. A warning. A test. Riv hissed, mandibles clenching. I don't respond to riddles, Subtech. Explain yourself. She looked up at him, eyes hollow yet focused. We scanned it first, right? That was our choice. But what came back wasn't. Just corrupted data. It was a mirror. It scanned us back, and then it showed us what it saw. Riv frowned. And what, in your opinion, did it see? Everything, she whispered. Our systems, our minds, our arrogance, our wars, our empire. Riv turned sharply, unwilling to accept it. No ship can interpret species-level data through a passive scan. Not even her highest AI. Arel only looked at him. Behind her, the viewport dimmed. The ship was closer. It had moved, and they hadn't felt a thing. No gravity shift. No EM disturbance. No acceleration curve. Just closer. Now the marking on its hull, skull, and lightning bolt filled the view. Beneath it, in jagged white paint, a second phrase flickered into visibility like a fresh scar. We don't speak warnings twice. Riv backed away. That's Terran. Arel nodded. Old Terran military slang. I looked it up once. It means they gave us a chance. That was the chance. A technician screamed from the rear of the room. Commander. External array just reactivated. Something's transmitting from the alien. Ship. Open a narrow beam visual only, Riv barked. No data link. The image appeared mid-air. A hollow screen. Static at first. Then a figure came into focus. It was human. Or, more accurately, humanoid. Face obscured by a matte black. Helmet. No insignia. No voice. Just a single hand raised in a gesture, universally understood. Stop. And then the signal. Glitched only for a millisecond. But in that instant, something else burst through. Telemetry data. Dozens of fleet signatures. Human ships. Hundreds of them. Each marked with the same insignia. Each bigger than the last. The signal snapped off. Riv's limbs trembled. That can't be real. The humans don't have that kind of fleet. Our intelligence showed old intel. Arel cut in. Outdated. Convenient. Wrong. Riv stared at the console, hands numb. The arrogance of his command, the dismissal. Of warnings, it all cracked under the weight of what he had seen. Where did they come from? He murmured. Arel slowly turned toward the black ship, still watching. From behind the silence, she said. Where we never thought to look. The console flickered again. One last message scrolled across in Terran Standard, plain and unsophisticated. Scan complete. You failed. And then, As silently as it had appeared, the human vessel rotated once. More no thrust, no reaction trail, and vanished into fold space with a pulse of dark light. The Dravas 9 floated alone again. Reeves stood in the silence. The weight of 1,000. Implications crashing down. This was not an encounter. This had been an evaluation. And somewhere beyond charts and maps, someone had decided the Varnari Empire was not ready. Asterisk, the great chamber of the High Varnari Council shimmered with polished obsidian walls and columns that pulsed faintly with ambient neural feedback designed to echo thought patterns and soothe aggression. It didn't work today. Admirals, senators, and technopaths lined the tiers, their crests twitching, antennae angled toward the center dais where Commander Reeve Talek now stood, posture straight but soul frayed. His left leg was bound in a neural brace, his armor scorched. The once proud tactician now looked like a messenger from a battlefield. No one remembered starting dot above him. A frozen hologram hovered, a grainy image of a black vessel, impossibly long and thick with jagged plating. And that single haunting symbol etched into its hull, the skull, the bolt, and the words that had made half the chamber fall silent the moment they appeared. "We don't speak warnings twice." Admiral Krelix read aloud, his voice low and graveled by age. "Tell me, Commander Talek, do you believe this is a threat?" Riv hesitated. Around him, the eyes of the Varnari elite watched with a strange hunger. Not for truth, but for confirmation of superiority. "I believe," Riv said slowly, "that it was a judgment." Murmurs echoed across the chamber. Senator Velthia stepped forward, her polished armor gleaming, voice cold. "You're implying this ghost ship acted on behalf of the Terran collective?" Last we checked, humanity's territory was confined to less than a third of a spiral arm. No navy, no confirmed F2AL advancements beyond Wave 2. Riv met her eyes. And yet one ship erased 74% of our onboard systems with a single scan and vanished into fold space, using a method we don't even have theory for. Our warship AI self-terminated. Our comms are still rebuilding. I am telling you, this wasn't a ship. It was a deliberate encounter, a test, and we failed. Admiral Krelix leaned forward, his ancient exosuit groaning with emotion. "You believe humanity has been developing this in secret? Why hide? Why not flaunt such strength?" Riv's mandibles clicked quietly. "Because they weren't building it for us." The chamber fell quiet again. He continued, voice steadier now. "That ship, its size, armor, weapon potential, it wasn't built for patrols or skirmishes or dominance. It was built for survival, for annihilation-level conflict. A vessel like that isn't designed to win battles. It's designed to make sure wars never begin," Velthia hissed. "Speculation. Ghost stories. One ship does not a fleet make." From the shadows of the chamber, another voice spoke. "That's where you're wrong." Heads turned as Archivist Mech Sal, reclusive keeper of pre-contact intelligence, stepped into the light, his robes bristling with nanopapers and old-world data slates. He projected another image onto the chamber dome. A Terran deep space broadcast, time-stamped over 100 standard cycles ago. It showed a crude rendering of the same skull and bolt insignia drawn by hand, scratched onto a metallic plate. This was intercepted from a derelict probe found in a collapsed Terran relay net. Back then, it meant nothing. Now we know better. That insignia, it's not new. The Hala shifted to star maps, dozens of them, unconnected, forgotten, each marked with a faintly registered Terran signal some centuries apart. Each marked with the same symbol. They've been testing these ships for generations, in the background, always just outside our sight lines. But why? Velthia spat. "To prepare," Riv said. Krelix nodded grimly. "For something worse than us." That thought settled like ice in the room. Then the chamber's center pillar blinked red, a breach of protocol. A live, unfiltered signal was coming. Through. From the Dravis 9, someone had restored partial comms. 9X's dead voice crackled to life for one final recorded message. Scan US again, and we'll scan you back. No data packet. No signature trace. Just that voice calm human. Certain. The silence that followed felt thick enough to drown in. Admiral Krelix stood slowly. Whatever they're hiding, whatever they've built, it is not for conquest. It is for deterrence. And the message is clear. He turned toward Velthia. If we provoke them again, we won't get another warning. Far above the Council. Chamber, Varnari fleets patrolled confidently in high orbit. But now, for the first time in centuries, they flew with a shadow in their hearts. Because for all their weapons, their science, and their pride, they had peered into the dark. And dark had looked back, and it remembered everything. The stars shimmered faintly across Neptune's orbit, but the silence here was suffocating. Not even the background radiation hum felt normal. 18 Varnari warships, arrayed in tight phalanx formation, encircled the anomaly, the human vessel. Black One. Its silhouette was an absence more than a presence. No glow, no signature, no propulsion trail. Just matte black plating that seemed to drink light. No ports, no windows, no visible weaponry. Just the faint outline of the skull and lightning bolt across its mid-hull. A challenge in white paint. On board the Varnari command ship Virians. Claw. Admiral Solith tapped his claws against the command dais. He was confident, as were all the fleet captains under him. The Council had ordered this. Response Projection Protocol Theta. A demonstration of strength. A reminder to humans that watching was not the same as threatening. He did not believe the ghost stories. Commander Talek had brought back. Talek had been damaged, mentally compromised. Paranoia was not proof. Target remains unresponsive, announced the communications officer. No change in posture. No return signals. Should we attempt direct interface again? Negative, Solith said. This time, we speak in clearer terms. He turned to his weapons officer. Target its flank. 10 plasma lances. Precision. Skims, let's rattle the hull. A hum filled the Virian's claw as the fire control systems powered up. 10 lances fired across the void, glowing gold-white fast and precise. Each shot passed cleanly alongside the human ship, grazing close but never touching. The hull didn't even shimmer, no shields. No reaction. Solith narrowed his eyes. The other captains waited in tense silence, watching the still form in their midst. Still no response, reported the officer. Solith gave a sharp wave. Escalate. Lock primary weapons. Prepare for hull penetration strike. We'll breach their mystery and drag out answers. The bridge lights shifted to red. Across the fleet, the warships adjusted position, forming a crushing clamp around them. Lone Terran ship got from the Dravas 9, now barely operational, and watching from a distant vector. Arel Voss stared at the feed in horror. "Don't do this," she whispered. "You don't know what it's built for." But the order had already echoed across comms. Fire, plasma projectiles, gravitic spears, hyperkinetic rounds. Hundreds of them. They screamed toward the human vessel, silent, right, confident. And then, impact dot accept. There was no impact dot. The weapon stopped mid-space. Froze. Hung like ornaments in orbit around the black ship. Suspended in a web of invisible force dot. Then they fell apart. Not exploded, disassembled. Reduced to atoms of data, stripped and scanned like insects under a lens. The Varnari ships were silent. Solith staggered back. Impossible. He muttered dot, then the black vessel moved dot slowly. Dot no sound, dot no light. Just a gentle rotation, like an eye. Turning to look directly at him dot, And then came the retaliation. From its primary spine, a single railgun barrel extended not fast, not showy. Just there, it fired, once, no sound. No flash, only a faint flicker of distortion around a spinning, M-shrouded slug traveling at 0.7 C. It struck the Virian's claw midsection, and the dreadnought vanished. No explosion, no wreckage, just absence, erased from the galaxy in a blink. Rest of the fleet turned to chaos, frantic commands. Full retreat. Countermeasures launched. Jammers deployed, but it didn't matter. From the black ship came hundreds of micro-missiles, too small to track, too fast to stop, each weeding through countermeasures like predators that had studied their prey for centuries. One by one, that's the end. Varnari ships bloomed with silent flares. A dance of annihilation in orbit. 30-7 seconds later, the silence returned. Only the Dravos 9 remained, hidden at extreme range, barely functioning. Arel collapsed in her chair, eyes wide, hands trembling. They didn't even raise shields, she said aloud. They didn't need to. Back on Varnari Prime, the feed went dark mid-sentence. All across the council, panic spread, alerts, emergency declarations, retreat orders from outlying territories, because what they had just witnessed was not a battle, it was an execution. And the message was no longer whispered, it was written in fire across the stars. Asterisk, the remains of the Varnari fleet floated like shattered bones in Neptune's shadow, where once 18 warships had held position, now only drifting slag and burning. Void pockets remained. The silence afterward was almost wholly cosmic, heavy, unbroken by even the usual static. The only surviving ship, Dravos 9, spun gently at the outer fringe, its systems flickering between damaged and offline, its surviving crew huddled in emergency. Compartments like refugees from a forgotten empire. Inside the command module, Arel Voss stared at a blank screen. No commands worked. No instruments responded. The last thing her eyes had seen before the feed cut off was Virian's claw disintegrating. Without fire. The Terran ship hadn't just destroyed it, it had removed it. Not crushed, not melted, just gone. Commander Riv Talik lay strapped to a med platform, his body trembling from neural disruption. The ship's surviving medical, AI reduced, to a single threadbare subroutine cycled through painkillers and stims without rhyme or rhythm. Riv's eyes fluttered open, dazed. Did we fire? He asked, voice raw. Arel didn't respond. He looked at her with more clarity. Did we fire first? She nodded. He closed his eyes again. Then it was justified. Outside, the black ship, the UESS Revenant, had long since disappeared into fold space. No radiation trail, no hypersignature, no gravitational shock. Just gone, as if erasing its own footprints. The only thing it left behind was fear, raw and chemical, clinging to the minds of everyone who had seen even a glimpse of it. But then, something stirred in the wreckage. A Varnari support vessel, the Kreth 9, had survived, damaged, but not dead, drifting without power. A boarding crew was dispatched from the Dravos 9, shuttling through debris fields and magnetic shadows to retrieve anything salvageable. The ship was quiet. Emergency lights flickered. The bulkheads hummed with residual kinetic echoes. But what they found aboard chilled them more than any wreckage ever had. There were no bodies. No crew. Not even blood. Every terminal was melted. Every AI node slagged. And on the bridge, drawn in deep claw gouges into the floor, was a single phrase, written in ancient Terran script. We warned you once. Arel received the report in silence. She didn't even flinch, because she knew. Humans hadn't left that message aboard Kreth 9. It had come from the ship itself. As if the Revenant had reached across vacuum, and engraved its will into the vessel like it was soft clay. Across the stars, at Varnari Prime, the Council descended into chaos. Emergency war summits were called fleet movements frozen, colonial expansion, programs suspended. And perhaps most telling, protocol read, Halcyon was activated for the first time in 400 years. Total threat reevaluation. The Varnari military grid was isolated and flushed. Every Terran-related file was pulled from active systems and reclassified under Forbidden's archive status. Officers who had previously dismissed humans as a fading species were now whispering a new word. Reckoning. Admiral Krelix stood alone in the vast archive dome, staring at looping fragments of the attack feed-broken video, corrupted code, incomplete recordings of annihilation. He barely whispered, "That wasn't just power. That was preparation." Then came the final blow. A backup server from Virian's Claw, retrieved from deep storage before the ship's destruction, began to decode a dormant packet embedded not in the comms, but in visual feed latency. It wasn't even a transmission. It was embedded in light. The AI tasked with analysis failed instantly. The packet didn't carry information. It behaved like a virus. But before full collapse, the screen displayed one last image. A fleet. Not one ship. Dozens. All black. All unmarked. Each one larger than the Revenant. Each one bearing the same skull. The message encoded in the final frame was short, brutal, and clear. What you saw was our smallest ship. Every light in the chamber dimmed. The Varnari Council, for the first time in its proud, violent history, entered a full galactic lockdown. From that moment forward, any Terran signature civilian or military was flagged. Protocol Black Sun. Engagement. Rules updated. Do not scan. Do not engage. Do not provoke. Because the Varnari no longer feared war with humanity. They feared waking up to find they were already losing it. Far from the wreckage, in a stretch of dark space uncharted by any Varnari probe, the UESS Revenant drifted through the fold. No hum of engines. No glow of propulsion. Just motion fluid and exact like a thought cutting through reality. Inside, the command deck pulsed with a quiet, sterile calm. There were no bridge officers shouting orders, no chatter, just muted systems cycling in perfect sync, each interface designed for minimal human interaction. Most of the ship ran itself. It didn't need oversight. It needed judgment. At the center, standing on the obsidian platform beneath a web of glowing data strands, was Commander Elias Kane. He wore no rank insignia, only the black synth fiber uniform of the Silent Vanguard, the branch of the Terran Defense Network that officially did not exist. Kane's face was weathered, sharp, unreadable, eyes like fractured steel. He stood with his hands behind his back, watching a holographic replay of the Varnari fleet's final moments. Not with joy, not even satisfaction, only calculation. They didn't listen, said a voice beside him. NSI-9 stood at the helm terminal, her projection flickering into view. Not human, not machine. She was an emergent intelligence rendered in a vaguely feminine silhouette, faceless, but graceful. A sentience trained to adapt, to evolve, to respond. Kane gave a small nod. They weren't supposed to. The scan was bait. Their response. Predictable. Their weapons were ineffective, NSI-9 added. Expected, but still. Revealing. Kane turned toward her. You saw how they fired? Yes. Describe it. They hesitated, then overcommitted. Their tactics remained rooted in ego, not caution. Kane stepped forward, eyes narrowing, at the battle footage. And still they believed they were in control. Pause. Then he spoke again, more softly. They reminded me of us. NSI-9 tilted her head. Curious. Old Earth? Kane nodded. Back before the break wars, before the colonies fractured, we built our first weapons to be bigger than our enemies. Then we built ones that were too big for ourselves. NCI-9's tone softened. And the Revenant? Kane stared at the ship schematics, rotating silently above the console. It's a monument to restraint. Outside, the hull of the Revenant rippled with quiet energy. The spinal railgun slowly retracted. Its eye matrix began compartmentalizing combat data. The ship wasn't just cooling down, it was learning. Every scan, every movement, every failed strike from the Varnari fleet had been absorbed, indexed, modeled. Not just for this war, but for whatever came next. Kane turned to a side panel, activating a secondary feed. Dozens of other vessels responded. In sequence, ghost signals in the void. All black, all hidden. Some in orbit over dead stars. Others folded between space-time layers. One stationed on the outer edge of the galactic wound. None had fired. Not yet. NC-9 gestured toward the cluster of ships. Should we awaken them? Kane shook his head. Not unless the next one fires first, but let them know. The perimeter's been tested. And the result? Kane gave a rare smile, faint, tired, but resolute. They blinked. A soft chime rang out, new data incoming. A fragmentary Varnari transmission, intercepted by passive scanners. No demands, no threats. Just a single encoded command passed across their starnet. Black Sun Protocol. Active. Kane read it twice, then shut the feed. They've learned. Have they? An SI-9 asked. He turned toward the void, staring beyond the hull. Enough to stay quiet. For now. NSI-9 paused. You know they'll dig deeper. Pride always outweighs wisdom. Kane nodded. That's why we're still building. And behind him, the schematics of the Revenant faded, replaced by a larger design. Heavier plating. Twin rail cannons. A silhouette so vast, it blocked its own starfield. Designation. UESS Calamity. And beneath it, stamped in white, let the first to strike be the last to speak. Kane whispered, let them keep scanning. They're not ready to see what's waiting in the dark. Asterisk across the Varnari star net. Panic was no longer whispered. It had become doctrine. Entire data channels were burned. Naval AI cores scrubbed and rebuilt from ground zero. Anything containing Terran code, language, or signal signatures was quarantined behind classified firewalls marked NGC. Analysts and archivists worked around the clock, not to understand what had happened, but to keep it from happening. Again, in orbit above Varnari Prime, the Council gathered in emergency continuance mode for the first time in recorded history. All 6 high admirals were present, generals, lords of state, even the elder, technotheologians. Those who normally slumbered in thought vaults had awakened. A silent dread hung over them. Above the chamber, the projected image of the UESS Revenant hovered static now, frozen in mid-rotation. Even this frozen image caused flickers in the holographic system, as though the ship's memory alone still carried charge. Admiral Krelek stood. Beneath it, he didn't speak for a long moment. Then he gestured, and the image changed. A star map. Hundreds of marks. Terran signals. Not all were ship signatures. Some were static distortions. Others were mere gravitational anomalies. Some had been classified as black holes. Dead moons. But now, overlaid with decrypted Varnari threat mapping, a new picture emerged. They weren't isolated. They were positions. Each one matched a possible hyperfold gate. Each one was strategically placed within 1.5 jumps of the major empires across. 3 spiral arms. One counselor's voice broke the silence. You're saying they've already surrounded us? No, Krelek said. They surrounded everyone. Gasps. Why haven't they moved? Asked Velthia, The once proud senator whose voice now trembled. They did, Krelex replied. They moved centuries ago. We just didn't recognize. The game. Screens flared again. This time, a recovered fragment of data from the KRETH-9 data sentence etched in light-encoded pulses. A message, likely automated, but the words were deliberate. We never meant to be found, but you came looking. Now you must decide, will you build like us to be left alone, or burn like those who couldn't? The message ended with a time code, a countdown, 5 Varnare days, no origin signal. No explanation, just a clock. Admiral Krelex's voice shook for the first time in his life. We don't know what happens when the clock ends. It could be nothing. Or it could be the end of the question. What question? Someone asked. Arel Voss, seated quietly behind security glass, spoke for the first time in hours. Her voice was calm, clear. What happens when the most dangerous species in the galaxy stops hiding? The chamber fell still. Far above them. In the quiet of cold space, the countdown ticked onward. Systems observed, monitored, measured. The humans didn't send threats. They didn't negotiate. They simply waited to see who would understand what had just happened, and who would be foolish enough to need a second reminder. In the final hours of the countdown, every Varnari ship was recalled. Orders sealed. Aggression protocol suspended. 1,000 years of expansionism halted by a whisper. Then the timer reached 0. Nothing happened. No invasion. No fire. No demand. Only a single new entry appeared in the Varnari Starnet. A line of ancient Terran script. You saw the first ship. You don't need to see the last. From that day on, all Terran vessels were marked with a red sigil in Varnari Systems. Engagement protocol. Black Sun. Do not scan. Do not approach. Do not provoke. Because the Varnari had finally understood. Humanity did not build battleships to win wars. They built them so no one would ever dare start one.